New Testament FAQ. Biblical knowledge that is not taught in church. Did the Apostle Paul write Romans? Those who receive such a question might find it absurd. So, are you saying that someone other than Paul wrote the letter to the Romans, which is one of his representative epistles? However, we must face the facts. The answer is in Romans chapter 1622. I, Tertius, who wrote this letter, greet you in the Lord. According to this verse, it is clear that the person who wrote Romans is not the Apostle Paul, but Tertius. And since this term only appears here in the New Testament, there is no way to verify further information. Here, we must understand that during the time of the New Testament, around the 1st century, there were disciples of the authors who recorded letters on behalf of the writers in the ancient Greco-Roman cultural sphere. In addition to this place, we can find other evidence that Paul utilized a scribe. I, Paul, greet you with my own hand. I, Paul, greet you with my own hand. Remember my chains, grace be with you. I, Paul, write this greeting with my own hand. This is the mark in every letter. In the above passages, the literal translation of, in my own hand, is, by within my own hand. If so, it would mean that the majority of the letter, specifically the earlier part of this passage, was written by someone else. Because Paul wrote from that point on in his own hand. Therefore, it becomes clear that Paul did not write at least Romans, 1 Corinthians, Colossians, and 2 Thessalonians directly, but rather composed them with the help of a scribe. Then why didn't Paul write directly? There could be several answers to this question. But perhaps the closest answer is that he had issues with his eyesight. We can find evidence for this in the book of Galatians. See what large letters I am using to write to you with my own hand. Why did Paul write his greeting in large letters? It may be related to the incident when he lost his sight after encountering the risen Lord on the road to Damascus, and was unable to see for 3 days. Of course, he did regain his sight with the help of Ananias at that time. But it is possible that it was not a complete healing. The reason for this can be found in the fact that the Galatians were willing to give up their own eyes as evidence of their reception of Paul as a messenger of God, or like Christ Jesus. Why specifically the eyes? This may be related to Paul's illness, that is, his physical weakness. Although he did regain his sight with the help of Ananias, he still had issues with his vision and experienced discomfort, which makes it plausible that the Galatians wanted to give up their own eyes for Paul. Therefore, in the latter part of the letter, Paul wrote in large letters, as if it were a signature today, to indicate that the letter to the Galatians was indeed his own. Another person who recorded letters with the help of scribe is the Apostle Peter. I have written to you briefly, encouraging you through Silvanus, whom I regard as a faithful brother. This is the true grace of God, stand firm in it. According to this passage, 1 Peter was not written by Peter himself, but was instead written by Silvanus, who is Silas. However, in the case of Paul's letters, they were recorded by having a scribe write them down under his direction. In the case of 1 Peter, it can be seen that Silvanus had considerable freedom to write under Peter's permission. For this reason, Peter introduces Silvanus by further explaining that he is a faithful brother, that is, a trustworthy brother. However, what needs to be clearly stated here is that, even if the letters were written with the help of others throughout his life, they are still the letters of Paul or Peter, not of Tertius or Silvanus. Therefore, just because someone else wrote on behalf of another does not raise any issues regarding the authorship of the letters. Although it may have been written by Tertius or Silvanus, those letters would have been completed after thorough review by the Apostle Paul and Peter, and therefore they are still considered letters of Paul and Peter. Then why is there no more record of Paul writing by the help of a scribe in his other letters? Perhaps it is the case with Romans. It is believed that Tertius specifically obtained Paul's permission to write his greetings in order to convey his regards to the brothers in Rome. In fact, apart from Romans, there is no way to know who wrote the letters of Paul. However, it is reasonable to assume that there were scribes who assisted in writing 1 Corinthians, Galatians, Colossians, and 2 Thessalonians, which contain Paul's own signature. Today's topic is to introduce the scribes who helped the apostles write their letters, highlighting that even great figures like Paul and Peter needed a helping hand. Just because someone is a great person doesn't mean they can do everything alone. In fact, there is no one in this world who does not need the help of others. Therefore, it is a beautiful thing to work together, combining our strengths and utilizing the talents given to each of us to carry out the Lord's work.